Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Everyday Therapy, a podcast designed to empower you to become the best version of yourself. This is the official podcast of Nystrom & Associates. We have over 50 clinics in various different states. You can find us at nystromcounseling.com. My name is Krista Overson. I'm a licensed therapist, and I'm here with the esteemed Brett, who is also a licensed therapist. And today we want to talk about how do we change behavior over time? Like, let's say I want to lose weight.
Yeah. I mean, come on, Krista. How do I get to be like you said, empowered to be my best version of myself? Because I keep failing all the time.
Right.
So I start to think this empowerment to be my best version of myself. Yeah, that's a pipe dream because I keep trying. And a lot of times I'll tell myself this time is going to be different. Mm-hmm. It's really going to work. And then
I do that all the time.
Yeah. So I think what we're trying to say is how do we really empower ourselves to become our best version of ourselves on a permanent, lasting basis, not for 6 months. Let's just hypothetically I lose 30 pounds and then I find it again 6 months later, right? So,
well, that's typically what happens. I mean, there is research on most weight loss is really hard to attain or to retain, I guess.
Yes.
Maintain. There it is.
Yes.
And that is typically because of this issue I think that we're going to be taking on today, which is we make this really big push towards a goal and we think we have to do kind of an all-out effort. Like tomorrow when I wake up, day one of my new goal is going to be a completely different existence for me. I'm changing all these different things, but it's not attainable. Right. It's such a shock to the system of your life as it is,
right,
that it's like, well, no wonder you failed because you didn't have any of this, all the little things that trip you up normally haven't been addressed. You're just thinking you're going to willpower your way through.
Going to white knuckle.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I'm never going to look at sugar again. I'm never going to look at fast food again. Yeah. Starting tomorrow.
I'm not going to get angry with my kids and react anymore.
Right. I'm not going to stress eat.
Right.
I'm not going to self-medicate with food.
Not going to react the way I typically do in the past. I'm not going to engage in this habit that I've engaged in for my entire adult life, whatever.
Yep.
And I think we can all relate to this, whatever area it is. And we try to set the table, don't we?
Right.
If I'm going to deal with anger, I'm going to read all these books on anger. I see myself, I'm going to do this like meditative Zen and I'm going to be peaceful. and so we get super excited, or I'm going to, do the weight loss thing. So I buy all these new workout clothes.
Yep.
And I'm reading some books on it and we set the table and we jump in and we're pretty good for a while.
Right.
And we think we can do this, but then it doesn't last. It doesn't sustain itself. And then we become actually more discouraged because I'm never going to change. Look at how hard I'm trying.
Right. Exactly. I think a good analogy that we might be referencing a couple different things today. There's a book called Atomic Habits that's very popular right now by James Clear. He has an analogy that he uses about an airplane. If an airplane is taking off and it's heading from New York to Los Angeles, if you change the trajectory of the plane, even just by like 3% when it takes off, let's say you bump the thing or just by accident, by the time you get all the way to your destination, you're off course by hundreds of miles because that small little 3% over all that distance, you're nowhere near where you wanted to go.
Right. Yeah. And as you know, I just got back from Italy and had a great trip.
Amazing.
But 3%, I wouldn't have ended up in Italy. I could have ended up at the North Pole. I could have ended up, in New Zealand.
Right.
Exactly. Or China or someplace I really didn't want to be.
Right.
Just based on that small little percentage.
Right. So it's the same way when we set a goal is we don't think that's going to happen to us.
Yes.
Like let's say in this analogy, I'm taking off in my plane and where I'm headed is 30 pounds lighter, right?
Yes.
Now, let's say a month goes by and every few days I make a decision that gets me 3% off the track towards that 30 pounds lighter.
Right.
Now, 2 months later, I haven't lost any weight and I'm super mad.
Yes.
I'm like, what the heck? Like I have no self-control. I'm always trying and failing, right?
Yes.
And then we get so discouraged. And we're like, but we don't look at how those little 3% increments happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not looking at the system as a whole. So anyway, So I think that's kind of one of the things that we're taking on today.
And I think we can all relate to that.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, and it's so frustrating because we say, I'm trying, I'm really working hard, and we look at that and say, there's nothing else I can do. I am doing everything. I am really trying hard.
Yep.
And so then hopelessness comes in, and we don't believe it anymore. And it's interesting. We start off believing I can do this.
Yep.
And we end up just by little increments of 1, 2, per 3%, not hitting the mark, and the belief is gone. And then I think we even kind of subconsciously say to ourselves, I'm not going to let myself get disappointed again.
Yes. It's not worth it.
It's not worth it because I just don't believe in myself anymore. I feel terrible about myself.
Right.
And I'm not even going to try to believe this.
Right.
And so I think sometimes people can listen to what we talk about here at Nystrom and say, hey, we want to empower people to become the best version of themselves. And people are saying, I don't believe it. I've tried. Oh, yeah. I've tried. So
don't know the things I've tried.
Yeah. So don't try to sell me on this. And well, today we're not trying to sell people. We want people to understand why this happens. And there really is hope for lasting, permanent change.
Exactly. And I think, so what we're describing is the equivalent of every time, let's say I'm flying a plane, it's from New York to LA. And what I'm saying, Brett, every time I've tried to fly from New York to LA, I end up in,
Iceland or, Greenland. Because that's a place that's all like snow.
Yeah, exactly. I end up in Greenland, and I'm just not going to try to fly from New York to LA anymore. And you're saying, well, have you addressed how every time you take that trip, you get 3% off course throughout the trip?
Right.
Like, let's look at what's going on there. And that's like me being like, no, it's me. I'm the problem.
Right. Right.
And so I think that's the hope right there is like, we can address that, right? It's only 3%, right? And he's not, and we're saying it's not a series of decisions that, like, even if you just focus on 1%, right? So that's the hope too, is we're looking at changes that are very small.
Yeah, so think about it this way. If you're all excited to go to a place like Italy, oh boy, this is going to be exciting and great weather and wonderful history there, phenomenal food, and you're all excited about this new destination. And like you're saying, you end up, just because of 2, 1, 3 degree sort of error in the plane
trajectory. Yep.
Yeah, you're ending up in a place really undesirable that, and what a letdown.
And it wasn't what you wanted.
Yeah. However, it's not that we have to make wholesale change. What you're saying and what a lot of the research says is, let's not only focus on the destination, let's focus on just making incremental 1% changes. So maybe I don't end up in Italy, but you know what? I'm not ending up in Greenland anymore.
There you go.
I'm ending up in
Arizona.
London. Or maybe a little closer to Italy. Like I'm in London, and it's foggy and rainy and cold, but
You're
at least
Europe.
I'm in Europe, right? I'm making progress.
Right.
And
exactly.
so it reminds me a lot of what we talk continually about here is that dialectical thinking versus dichotomous all or nothing. When we set our goals, we kind of make it all or nothing. Like, hey, I'm going to get to Italy right now, and it's Italy or bust. And so if I end up in London, I've failed. I'm a failure. I'm no good.
Yep.
And then we quit.
Yep. Like, well, that's never happening again.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting is you talk about atomic habits, and there was an article about this in Psychology Today recently, end of May, by Kyra Babinet. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but how permanent behavior change really works. And what she was saying is that there's actually a part of the brain, the habenula. And new part of the brain that's discovered, the habenula. Now, what we find is that when we actually engage, we develop goals. And they talk about in that article, like SMART goals. A lot of people at work have these SMART goals. Oh, yes. Like SMART is... it's an
acronym. So SMART.
Yeah.
So the S is Oh my God.
Specific?
Specific.
Yeah,
Thank you.
specific,
I'm like, oh, no.
measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. I couldn't remember this. Yes. So, but yeah, and it really applies to SMART goals and everything else we've talked about. They actually talked about weight loss too. And they said a recent study on long-term weight loss showed that the gold standard of lifestyle change programs, the diabetes prevention program, it only yielded a 1% difference in weight loss maintenance between the intervention and control group. So no wonder, that goes on to say, no wonder our society, with over 70% of people classified as overweight or obese, is turning now to the quick fix kind of injectable, take a drug kind of thing to lose weight. And so what we're learning, though, is in the area of neuroscience, what's actually happening here is that traditional behavior change programs that are kind of this all or nothing, it's Italy or bust, they all kind of have this performance-based goals that kind of look like SMART goals. And long-term tracking and counting of things, calories, etc. That doesn't work because while we get really excited at first and we're like, hey, I'm making progress. I can see we're moving towards Italy, but we don't notice the 1%, 2%, 3%.
We're still not addressing that.
Yeah, exactly. We don't notice. So now what they say is when we get kind of far off the goal or just even a little bit, that's when this new area of the brain, the habenula, it turns on. Okay. And when that happens, that kills our motivation. Okay. So when the habenula, all hell breaks loose for us with the habenula, right? Because it leads to feelings of self-blame, depression, anxiety. And so it's like when we set these goals for ourselves and we're all excited and like you're saying, I'm getting off track just by 1%, 2%, 3%. Sure. We notice that, and then this aspect of the brain, the habenula, kicks in, and that's why we feel, I'm never going to get better. We lose this hope. We don't believe it. And it's actually a part of our brain that's kicking in, and we're kind of fighting against that, and we don't even realize it. Because
I think what you're saying is the habenula, which I'll be honest, I didn't know about this part of the brain. I even being a therapist, that's a new one for me. Yeah. So this is helpful. So it kills our motivation. So I'm trying to think of an example. Can we just do an example of a SMART goal? Because I want to make sure people understand when we're saying SMART goals, this has been sort of the gold standard of goal setting in not just mental health, but kind of all over the place. Right?
Yeah, it's big in corporate world everywhere. Yeah.
So let's do a SMART goal really quick about weight loss.
All right.
So that would be me saying, all right, Brett, we're going to do a SMART goal. It has to be specific, measurable, attainable, reasonable. What's the word? Relevant, and time oriented. Right. So specific. What do you want?
I want to lose 30 pounds.
Okay. So we have a specific goal, which is I want to lose 30 pounds. It's not just I want to lose weight. Right. So I want to lose 30 pounds. It's measurable because we will be able to tell have you lost 30 pounds or not. Right. Attainable. Do you feel like that's an attainable goal for you?
By next week? Absolutely.
Okay. What's
over 6 months? Right. Let's say sure.
Okay. So that's attainable. Relevant.
Yes.
How is this kind of like relevant to your values or like relevant to your life?
It's relevant to lots of things, physical health, mental health. Okay. Everyone's going to think I'm the greatest person in the world. Sure. Yeah.
So like you have a buy-in that's like, this is relevant to my life. This isn't just a weird random goal. Okay. And then time oriented, you pretty much touched on, which is by when will you have this completed? Right. Yeah. Okay. So you're going to lose 30 pounds over the next 6 months. It's relevant. You want to do it. You feel like it's attainable. So that's a SMART goal. So you set off and you have all your different ways that you're planning on doing this. Maybe it's, I'm going to exercise every day. I'm going to track my calories. Yep. And you set off and like the first week, maybe 2 starts going pretty good. Yes. You might even weigh yourself and you've lost a couple pounds the first week, right? How many of us have been there where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm doing my goal. My motivation is high, right? Yeah. Well, now let's say you go on a trip to Italy and then hypothetically, and you come back and you look at the scale and it's not only not lower like you wanted it to, but now you've gained a little bit of weight. So
darn Italians. Yeah, I knew it. I knew their food is too good.
That's what I hear.
It's phenomenal.
Right? I mean, you're flesh and blood.
I'll blame it on them.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think this is where we're saying the habenula kicks in, right?
Yes.
And it's like, you know what? That's when you might start thinking to yourself, you know what? I don't know if I want to do this.
Right.
I'm fine the way I look. I'm fine with how I am.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened here?
Or what I might do is not even say I'm fine. I might say, this sucks. I'm no good.
Exactly.
I don't have the discipline. And notice the all or nothing mentality. That's the habenula that really kicks in and where we get into the self-blame.
Yes.
We're not motivated anymore. Right.
But I'm so glad we're using this example because basically what happened was there was nothing wrong with this strategy, but I think this iterative mindset that this article is talking about and that James Clear is talking about is like, we have to address and strategize about the how. Yes. How are you going to get there? And it's not going to look like what you think because you set off on the journey thinking the how is I'm going to exercise every day. I'm going to count all my calories. I'm going to avoid sweets. I'm going to do all these things, right?
Yes.
So the iterative mindset is like, well, how about if we look at what's going to make it more likely for you to exercise several times a week? What are going to be your day-to-day little habits that get you there? Right. Right.
And, think about that. A lot of times when we do engage in something like weight loss or any kind of habit we want to change in our life, it's very all or nothing. Mm-hmm. And so we set ourselves up for failure that way because it's not going to be all or nothing. It's not like I'm going to really continually do 2 pounds a week for, 20 weeks. Yeah. It's going to be 7 pounds one week. I might gain 5 the next. It could be it's all over the place.
Right.
But our expectation is that it's going to be very linear. And if it's not,
that's when we get.
Then the habenula kicks in.
And we're discouraged. And now our motivation's shot and we feel real bad.
Yeah. And we lose the hope.
I'm not doing it.
Yeah. And I'm no good.
Mm-hmm. Right. Which is no one likes feeling that way. And it's not effective.
Well, that's and in the addiction, substance use world, one of the key factors to relapse is resentment. Mm-hmm. And when we have resentment building up within ourselves towards ourselves, we're going to relapse to the old behaviors. And I think what this article in Psychology Today was showing is that that's a part of our brain that's kicking in. It's the habenula that is really kind of activating this sense of fear and failure.
Yep. And then again, I want to, mention that I want to know what you think about this. Yeah. It sounds a little far-fetched to me. So James Clear in Atomic Habits is saying, focus on getting 1% better every day.
1%?
I know, you're probably thinking, how is that going to get me to lose 30 pounds?
Right.
What does that even mean? Right?
I'll never lose weight that way.
Right. So I think one example of that would be for the first week or two, let's say you exercise every day. So how are we going to bypass the cycle of I do super motivated, super good for 2 weeks, I hit a wall, and then I quit. Yeah. So how about instead of that, it's I work out for 10 minutes a day every day. Mm-hmm. But it's every day. Right. Or it's like, again, finding something a little more reasonable that you can incorporate into your daily habits. So for you might say, well, I'm going to go to the gym every day. And again, that motivation in the beginning is going to get you there. Yeah. But then when you hit that wall, it's like, well, now it just seems like way too much work to go to the gym every day because the habenula's kicked in and it's demotivating and you feel bad. So you're like, So at the beginning, you're like, what's something I know I can do every day where I don't have to go to the gym? I don't, I don't have to go out of my way and do a separate trip. I don't have to, whatever. What's the most likely thing you could set up your day to support 10 to 15 minutes of exercise? Not 2 hours like we think we're going to do. Yeah. I'm going to do a 2-hour workout every day for this goal.
Yeah. And I think what's difficult for us is going back to the flight analogy. Yep. Is you're looking for the most direct flight. If I could fly from Minneapolis to Naples, Italy, great. And that's what I want to do. But if I have to fly from here to Chicago to New York, to London, to Paris, oh my God, I don't want to go to Paris again in that airport. I don't want to do that. I want a direct, quick, easy flight. And so what we're saying is for lasting behavioral change that's permanent,
right,
it's going to mean little places along the way to make sure you get there. So in other words, I heard early on in my career, this guy that worked for me, we were talking about this. He said, inch by inch is a cinch. Yard by yard is hard. And never forgot that. But that's
brilliant.
Kind of what we're talking about is that the solution is it's not that we don't set goals. We set goals, and then we every little inch along the way, we're continually stopping and adjusting.
So you're saying set goals, but keep updating your goals?
Yes. Keep looking in at that.
Right. Because usually what we do is we're like, no, this was my goal and now I'm not getting there and therefore I'm abandoning this goal. Right. You're saying revise, right?
Revise, is that what you're saying? Adjust, like sort of assess and adjust.
Sure. And James Clear says goals, he actually says forget about setting goals, which might be a little controversial, but he says goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems, he says, focus on your systems. Systems are about the processes that lead to those results. So again, it's not that we're discarding results. Of course we want results, right? But we're looking at, our focus is in the wrong place when it's goals. Because we're like, I want the success, right?
Right.
So
and that makes sense.
Why?
That does make sense, because when we set the goal and we say, this is the goal, notice the nature of that goal is all or nothing. Right. The goal is 30 pounds.
Right.
It's not 25. It's not 20. It's not 15. Yep. So by nature, sometimes the way we set the goal is all or nothing. Yep. And it's not incremental. It's wholesale.
Yeah.
Whereas, what you're saying is maybe the goal is not all or nothing. The goal is I am going to make lifestyle changes little by little. So I don't want to get angry with my kids. And I'm not going to say I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to read all these books. I'm going to take classes. I'm going to go to therapy. Yep. I'm going to maybe start seeing a therapist once a week.
Yep.
I'm going to evaluate how I'm doing a month later.
Right.
And then make some adjustments like, this, I'm going to therapy, but I'm really not doing what my therapist is encouraging me to do. Right. Why am I not? And then don't get critical, just become curious and say, that makes sense.
Right.
How can I adjust this now? So we assess and we adjust, but a key part of that is in the assessment, we also have to accept ourselves too. And so we're fighting against that Benula effect, right? Because we're going to feel that sense of failure. So we assess and then we accept ourselves, not critical, like, oh, I stink, but of course. Yep. Of course, I've been doing this for 50 years. It's not going to change overnight. Right. I'm going to be curious about this and now I'm going to adjust.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know if the Psychology Today article addressed this piece of it, but another thing that James Clear suggests is if you're going to build lasting habits, so habits that promote your long-term goal or your long-term result, you have to look at how it ties in with your identity. Ooh. So you need to start believing new things about yourself. So like if you think he says you have to do two things. You have to decide the type of person you want to be. And you have to prove it to yourself with small wins. Right. So for, again, the example of weight loss, maybe instead of saying I'm going to lose 30 pounds, like how could we tie that into your identity? Right? Because that's yes, it's measurable. Yes, it's attainable, but it's like, what does that have to do with the person you are?
Right.
Right. Yes. So I'm not sure how that would look as a identity goal or identity-based habit.
Well, I like the identity-based part because it really speaks to, I think, our lack of acceptance that underlies a lot of our goals to begin with.
Yeah.
Like, I don't accept myself
as I am.
So therefore, I have to change in order to be acceptable. It's very all or nothing. So instead of just accepting, this is the way I am. I remember I coached football for my oldest son. And our first year, we did okay. Second year, we actually won the championship.
Oh my gosh.
Third year, we had guys that never even held a football. I remember saying to one of the kids, like, we had everybody hurt, and I said to a kid, all right, you're the fastest on the team. Go, you're the quarterback this time. Go hike the ball and just run, because they didn't know what they're doing. And he goes, okay, coach. He goes in, he comes back, and he's like, how do I hike the ball? Like he didn't know, and I'm assuming he did. But we had to sort of accept, what, this is where we are as a team.
This is where we're at.
And so we didn't say, hey, our goal is to win X amount of games. Mm-hmm. Our goal was, I want this kid to catch a ball this week.
Nice.
And I want this kid to learn how to tackle. I want this kid to be able to do this. Yeah. And maybe we win some games or something, but the celebration for little milestone accomplishments was as big as the previous year when we won the championship.
Nice.
And that's what I think we fail to do. And we're so hard on ourselves. Yeah. And part of it is we don't have this acceptance, and we don't have realistic expectations of ourselves. So we set ourselves up for failure.
Exactly. So, yeah, you could decide. I'm trying to think of a good example of changing from a SMART goal to how does this tie in with my identity, right?
Yeah.
It could be like, I want to be this type of person who takes really good care of my body.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be someone who I feel really good physically and mentally.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Which has nothing to do with the pounds on the scale. Not that you can't set a goal for the pounds on the scale. It's not about that. But it's like, what am I going to come back to over and over that's like, this is part of who I am. This matters to me on a higher level than just looking better in my swimsuit when the summertime comes or whatever.
So we kind of have to start with what we talked about before on the podcast, like radical acceptance of who I am.
Exactly. This is the status quo.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, this is who we are. We're not a championship team this year.
Right.
This is who we are.
Yep, exactly. And then figure out ways to prove to yourself that you're the type of person you want to be with small wins, right?
Yeah.
So what would some examples of small wins be? Because we're kind of comparing the all or nothing of losing 30 pounds in 6 months or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What would be some examples of small wins for that kind of SMART goal that you could prove to yourself you're the type of person that wants to feel good physically and emotionally?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think this is what we talk about in like DBT language. We do comparison skills. Okay. And so we don't compare ourselves to where we want to be. We don't compare ourselves to people who are already where we want to be. Mm-hmm. We compare ourselves to where we were. Mm-hmm. And so like a way I think to answer your question is to sort of look back and say, wow, look, I'm like 25% fewer calories than I ever had. I never thought I could do that.
Yeah, totally.
And we just look back where I remember eating chips till 10 o'clock at night and stuff. And then I'm not doing that anymore.
Yep.
And just recognizing and then celebrating that success that way.
Yes. Or my big one, whenever I've set a goal of, either weight loss or becoming more fit or whatever, I have a battle with the snooze button every day.
Sure.
And because I've said to myself, I'm going to get up and exercise at 5 a.m. before work. Right.
Right.
But then what starts to happen is the snooze button leads to that failure.
Yes.
Or hitting the snooze button means I skip my workout. Yep. Now I feel like a failure. Now I just abandon it. And I'm like, I guess I'll just figure it out later, you know? But this last week I've gotten up with my roommate because that gives me accountability.
Nice.
So both of us want to do it.
Yes.
And we've gotten up and we haven't exercised for a super long time. You know what I mean? It's like the workouts we've done at, 5 a.m. have been fairly easy, or it's like, but we're trying to do, we're getting this goal underway. We're not going to do a 2-hour workout, right?
Right. Like, you're not evaluating yourself in terms of where I want to be. You're evaluating yourself in terms of where I have been and where I am now.
Right. So the small win for me is 4 days this week I got up early and exercised, which I haven't done in like years.
Mm-hmm.
Years. Like I might do it once a week, like once a month.
Yeah.
Where I actually, so what that shows me is that my course correction is keep having accountability, right? If I'm evaluating, okay, how's this going? I'm not really focused on pounds. I'm not really focused on that. I'm focused on how am I going to sustain this?
Right. Yes.
And so one of the things I'm going to build in, and I think on the next podcast, we're going to talk about how to build better habits, but figuring out what works. And for me, accountability just works. If I'm left to my own devices at 5 a.m. with my snooze button, it ain't happening. If I know my roommate's coming up and knocking on the door and saying, okay, let's go.
Yeah, right.
That's enough to get me out of bed. Yeah. So anyways, I hope this has been helpful.
I think we're scratching the itch that a lot of people have. I remember I used to have a little bumper sticker in my office years ago. It said the only way to fail is to quit. And I would add to that, like, don't quit. And instead of like when we do feel like we're a failure, just realize, hey, we're making progress, and let's not forget that. And like, there's this part of the brain that's getting kicked in. That's all or nothing about failure. Don't quit. Just accept, adjust, and just keep accepting and adjusting. And you won't quit, and you won't fail.
Exactly. All right, everybody. I hope this has been helpful. Tune in for our next one where we talk about building better habits in 4 simple steps.
Thank you as always for listening, and please be sure to leave us a review. While this podcast can't be a replacement for therapy, we hope you enjoyed our discussion today and join us again next time. Nystrom & Associates is always available to those who are struggling. If you find yourself in need of support and help, please check us out at nystromcounseling.com.